Friday night.
It is
Time
Friday
for
night.
time for evidence-based triathlete.
So this is a record for us. I think this is the first time we've ever been early on a Friday night.
Well, consider early. I mean, we've done 3 o'clock. I
We've
mean,
done
that
3 o'clock. That's true. That's true. But we've never bled into our
was
normal 6 o'clock time. But so nice that we're actually talking to somebody from a couple time zones away. So we're trying to be conscious of the time zones, which we have done before for sure. So yeah, tonight we're going to talk about running, and we're super excited to have a running coach on with us.
Hi, I'm Breeda.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, John. I thought John was going to introduce you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll jump in. Yeah, so tonight we've got a special guest, and actually, this is from one of our listeners and viewers, Rick Simpson, put us in touch with Breeda Willis, who is an Olympic runner, 5K runner, 2000 Olympic athlete representing Ireland. And she is not only an elite athlete, but she also coaches, and her daughter is an elite athlete as well. And really interestingly, where we sort of intersect with interest is she's used a lot of body weight support in her running program. And so we're going to try to tease into some of those details and get some of the secret sauce with using body weight support for a runner. We've done a lot of research on it, but it's sort of neat to talk with someone on the front lines of using body weight support to help a runner. So good evening, Breeda. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, why don't we just start with, I know you want to jump into the coaching part, but maybe just give a sort of a synopsis of your running career.
I started running about the age of 7, and I grew up in Ireland, obviously. And Ireland was a very big sport when I was young, and I just raced a lot, won several national titles, and ran a couple of good fast 800s, which got me a scholarship to the United States, and came to the United States and ran for Western Kentucky University, became All-American and showed some potential. Obviously bumped up to the longer distances straight away, which was unfortunate, but so kind of was bumped up to the 5K and longer distances and didn't really develop my potential over the shorter distances. And then ran professionally on the roads for a while, and then dabbled back into the track, and ended up finishing my career as a track athlete, making the 2000 Olympic team. And then kind of, runners, their career evolves where they seemingly can continue to race, and sort of dabbled a little bit in the roads before I retired. And that kind of is this in a nutshell.
I love it. And before we started, we were talking about, still competing now, and I'll leak out that you said, well, you're not interested in competing in running, but if you were going to get back, you'd do a triathlon. Is that right?
The way I train like a triathlete. So I do a lot of swimming, biking, and other activities, and all those things would combine if I was competitive enough or was interested in competing, for me to be the perfect triathlete. Being runner is the perfect triathlete. So I definitely love all 3 sports. Definitely found a love for swimming for sure. And I really enjoy biking as well.
Oh, I love it. Well, and maybe we'll start with getting into your experience with the body weight support. How did you discover this, and how do you use it at this point?
So about 7 years ago, I was having, some kind of back pain. As aging runners, we always get these aches and pains, and triathletes do as well. Little less so than runners, because ours is such an overuse kind of sport. And I saw an ad. I was kind of like exploring my options, and I saw an ad on Runner's World online for the Lightspeed lift, and I contacted the owner of the company, and he lived 5 hours north of me in Duluth. And Malcolm very quickly got in his car and drove to Stevens Point and set me up with a Lightspeed, and I was hooked from that day on. So, with the weather in Wisconsin, it makes it really easy to use the Lightspeed about 6 months of the year, because you're always on a treadmill. And it just made running so much more efficient. And, you know, on those tired days, you can just jump on the light speed, whereas maybe you wouldn't get a run in it all that day. So that's kind of how I got started in it, and kind of evolved from there, using it as a coaching tool with my athletes and then a training tool with my daughter. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say you use it as a coaching tool for your athletes, I guess we should first all talk about really quickly about the athletes that you're working with now. Are they mostly younger, or are they age group athletes? What's the demographic?
I kind of work with a variety of ages. So I have athletes that would be like in their 60s, some in their 40s, some 50s. And then, you know, I work a lot with kind of elite or semi-elite high school athletes that are looking to get scholarships. Yep. Or to even just walk on teams, which is also very challenging to do. And then I obviously work with my daughter, and she just recently won a world title in the 800 meters. So all ranges from very, very elite to people just enjoying going out for a run. And in the past, I've worked with a lot of marathon runners as well.
Okay, so out of those people, how many of them are using unweighting treadmills or unweighting support systems?
Well, every client that I work with that comes into my facility generally gets an opportunity to use the light speed.
Yeah.
So
is it when they're injured, or just prophylactically, so before they're injured?
Oh, we don't use it as just an injury tool for training. It's actually something that kind of is involved, especially with training my daughter, because she's got access. Actually, I have 2 light speeds in my home. So I have 2 different treadmills. But she, in the winter, does about 90% of her training supported on the light speed. And she's predominantly a runner. And it allows us to always run, because she likes running the best. She doesn't like to cross train. And then it also kind of keeps her healthy and sort of fresh. And then the other thing is too, I don't know if you've ever tried to run 60-second 4 flat pace on a treadmill.
I personally haven't. That sounds insane.
Okay, so some of her sessions would involve going 4 flat pace, yep. So 60-second quarters. And it's kind of precarious on a treadmill, because that's really, really fast. And you're going to feel, it just isn't that safe. And so for those sessions, we can actually keep her suspended, because it's really safe and she feels really comfortable. And you're not like feeling like the wheels are going to fall off going that fast. So it enables us to actually have her run faster than she normally would outdoors. So she's getting all those great cardiovascular benefits, and she's not beating up her body. And it's just really worked really, really well. Yeah.
And actually, I have done that pace, but in Ks, not in miles. Just so you know, I can do the 4 4K, yeah, 4K pace, no problem. 4K. Okay, so that being said, I love this, because I actually am integrating this into my training now as well. You know, yeah. As I become an older runner, I'm getting injured more, and I'm doing the things I think I should be doing. I'm weight training. I'm definitely cross training. I'm a triathlete. And so, I mean, to be honest with you, in the last 3 weeks, I've only ran supported. And I do notice, especially when you do increase the pace, you just don't get beat up as much, but you're still getting a lot of the same neurologic responses. Is that what you're seeing as well?
A lot of the same neurological responses, a lot of the even better cardiovascular benefits. And the other thing is that when you adapt, which is very, very strange, when you actually adapt to outdoor running, you don't feel like you've lost anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm finding it so hard to run outside now because I've done all this light speeding. The biggest thing is just giving your bones a chance to kind of adjust to just that extra stress. Yeah. And if you allow yourself just some time to adapt, if you're going to go to all land running again. But it definitely, I think one of the biggest tools that I use we were never scared to overuse it. Mm. Yep. And it can be used as a training tool on a daily basis. And anytime you've got a hard session, it's like, just to feel confident enough and take the chance. You know what? I'm just going to use this and see how it goes and experiment with it for a while. And the great thing about it is that it's a really good quality piece of equipment, but it's very inexpensive for the average triathlete or the average home exerciser or recreational runner to be able to afford. You're not going to go out and spend 25,000 on a boost or 75 on an Alter G.
Yeah.
But you've got 3,000 something in your pocket for a light speed, you know. It's just inexpensive. Like, to say that even in my home, I have two, you know, and just trusting that there's just tremendous benefits from it. And I sent one of my light speeds to my friend. I coached her daughter for cross country, and she's really young. She only just entered high school this year. And my friend is also a former Olympian who ran in the 10,000 meters for Ireland as well, and finished 8th at the Olympic Games. And I sent her a light speed, and she just thinks it's the most phenomenal thing ever. And she even contacted me tonight. She's like, I need 3 more pairs of shorts. Half the cross country team are coming to train on the light speed, you know, because the girls are hurt. And so it enables them to continue. And maybe even by the end of the season, they might score on the team because they've been able to continue to run. And it's very, very accessible. You don't have to get to a pool. You don't have to get to a gym. You know, it's right there. So that makes it even more user friendly. So if it's user friendly, you'll use it more often, get all these benefits from it.
So I think that's great. So one of the things that I just throwing this up that I do to kind of increase that maybe bone density or just the plyometric side is when I get off, then I go and jump rope.
Okay.
And so I just do like 6 or 7 minutes of jumping rope afterwards. And I feel like when I'm still getting that a little bit more of that compression, but it's just doesn't beat you up the same way muscularly. So that's one of the little tricks that I've used along with the unweighting. I don't know if you've ever done that.
Yeah, well, there's other things. I mean, I think that's really interesting and a really good idea. You know, if you can jump rope, but for some people, let's say that those that are kind of like slightly injured or can't jump rope afterwards. One of the things that I really like about it is afterwards, I might actually go into some deadlifts.
Yeah, strength training right afterwards. Exactly.
Training.
It's a similar kind of thing. Yeah.
Or as well, like, I'll actually get off. One thing I really like to do, because when you are suspended, it's just a little bit easier. If I've done a couple of days of biking in a row, so I've gotten off the Peloton and I've done some biking, and I just really feel like, hey, I need to loosen up after being on the bike, because the bike kind of makes you kind of tight. And you know, I try to go heavy resistance for me, and then I like to get up and get on the light speed and be free for a little bit and just get my legs turning over and feel that body weight, you know, and do it supported. And so I just get on the light speed and do a couple of Tabatas and finish out my workout like that. So it's kind of a nice little variation. So I actually have a light speed. I have a green treadmill, a Woodway green treadmill. Have you ever seen them? Curve?
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually have mine on my Curve treadmill.
Oh, okay.
And so
you're still pulling through hard then.
Yes. So you're actually really moving that belt. And the great thing about that is kind of a slight incline. So you're using the posterior chain, you're using your hamstrings and your glutes a lot more. So that's another way that I use it. And the Curve, for, you know, I used to do a lot of group training before COVID hit. So I would have, you know, maybe 10 young athletes in my facility at once, which is really in my house. So, but in a very small space, I'd have 10 athletes, and some of them wouldn't be used to using the Curve. So I'd a couple of different straps and shorts, and I'd put the shorts on a couple of the kids that hadn't done the Curve before. And when it came to their turn to do their sprint, because now we're going 17 miles an hour or faster, I put the light speed on them so that they felt safe running at an extremely high speed, and they were suspended. And then we didn't have any learning curve time, and we could keep the session going really fast.
Interesting.
You know, I want to jump back to something you said where you said your athletes can go from the body weight support and going back to running over ground, and they don't lose anything. And that's really neat. You know, the research that we've done, we've looked at how active muscles are, and we've looked at how the pattern of muscle activity occurs during running. And we've noticed it's spot on the same for running with no body weight support to about 50%. But then once you start getting to more than 50%, then the coordination starts to change. But in that 50 to 100%, the coordination is exactly the same. And so it really sort of is affirmation in terms of what you're talking about here. But what level of body weight support do you use with the light speed?
Like how much weight would I take off?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably about, for my general folks, I'd probably only go about 25 to 30 pounds.
Yeah, okay.
So an average person like 15%.
Yeah.
It's 150 pounds.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
about 15%. And then for myself, I take I take a lot more than that off. So
Yeah.
I'd probably go to that 50% when I'm running. Yeah.
That's great. And so it's really, you're training the neural component of running for sure at those levels.
Yeah. And one of the things, that another way that I use it is just when I have an injured athlete with a stress reaction. And if you can kind of determine, hey, this bone is stressed, it's very pinpoint specific. I really feel, well, there's pain there. And if the pain continues after, at night when it feels like a toothache, then you're pretty sure that that's a stress reaction. What I've done with my athletes is, okay, it's not a stress fracture. We're gonna light speed you and we're gonna continue to train. And I've had tremendous success with that, where athletes come out and they start racing and out of the gate they're running PRs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So just the ability to stress that bone with that suspension system is phenomenal. Yeah.
So do you subscribe to the philosophy of like more of a polarized training approach? So you're mostly like zone 1, zone 2, and then on the other side we're going zone 4, 5. Not a lot, not a lot in the middle.
No, I don't.
Okay.
It would depend on, I guess it would depend on your event. So as you guys are triathletes, and probably endurance triathletes doing a lot of Ironmans and the longer half Ironmans and things like that, I think you guys probably train a lot in zone 1, zone 2. So, and then for marathon, you're going to bring that up a little edge. You're going to have to get into that zone 3, zone 4 more.
For sure. Yeah.
But I train athletes across the spectrum. We have to work, especially when I'm working with track athletes from 400 to 1500 meters in the mile or 2 mile. We have to work all the energy systems, and we have to really get from, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you guys use zones more in triathlon.
Yep.
Than we do in running.
You use more pace, right?
Not pace. We talk more energy systems like alactic, anaerobic glycolytic, lactic threshold, aerobic. And so we work kind of in that spectrum. And so they actually don't really call them zones like that. Okay. And probably, I actually did learn those zones a little bit from Rick, your good friend Rick. And then they also have the zones on the Peloton. They have a lot of the zones.
Yeah, but the zones match the vernacular you're talking about, and
they do.
And ultimately, why I was asking is, I think it's really a valuable tool if someone wants to stay aerobic, but they can't running. Like I worked with many people and talked to many people. Yeah. They're like they especially when they are relatively new to endurance training, just going for an easy run, and they're like, they're well past aerobic, and you can't develop that aerobic system so efficiently. We put them on body weight support. They can run a good pace, but their heart rate is staying aerobic. So do you use that as well?
Yes, that's something. So basically, a lot of times, like, let's say I just have the average female coming in and she just wants an overall good workout. Right. And she's coming to work that day. And if I pop her on the treadmill and I'm doing like intervals with her, she's going to get fatigued within about the first 3 to 4 minutes. And our session could pretty much start and finish within 5 minutes.
Exactly.
But if I suspend the person coming in the door, now we can lengthen the amount of time that they're on the treadmill. We're able to lengthen the overall session. And just like you talked about, they're not getting anaerobic so quickly because they're unfit, and they're getting that little bit of support. And then that support makes them feel successful. And then the workout in turn ends up longer and more successful with more benefits. than if they had gone out and tried to do it without a support system. So
And I love this because not only are we talking about like injury prevention, we're not only we're talking about just training, but now we're talking about like energy systems and altering energy systems based off of how much load you're taking off.
Yeah,
which
it's
is super
phenomenal.
cool. If you understand the energy systems or the zones, whatever way you want to take it, just by altering the amount of weight you take off, you can really change what ultimately you're doing physiologically.
Yeah.
Okay,
And yes, it's so weird because you're not actually, like I talked about, like having my daughter run at such fast paces on the treadmill. And like I said, she's getting a lot of the cardiovascular fitness benefits out of it, but she's probably not getting as lactic as she would if she was doing that exact same workout outside.
Yep.
But for some reason, it's still translating into very, very fast track times when she goes to race.
Well, I would say it's because of the aerobic development that's happening, right?
Yeah.
The aerobic development is going to happen regardless if you're at 130 beats a minute or 150 beats a minute. Aerobic happens the same. And really, the aerobic system and building mitochondrial density is ultimately what's going to help her, right? And it's the ability to utilize lactate, and that's what's ultimately she's training herself. It's utilizing lactate as a fuel, and I think it's a win-win. I really do.
Yeah. You should be a sales rep for Lightspeed here.
Well, John and I, we spend a lot of time talking physiology and ways to alter physiology in the most efficient way. And that's in triathlon, that's what we do, right? We're trying to do 3 sports. So we have to be very mindful of the physiology that's going into this and understanding central fatigue and all these other things. And where we can reduce that at some points is actually quite important.
Yeah. And I think that's a key, like you talk about fatigue, and it's being, the Lightspeed enables you to get on there fatigued and yet get that workout in and still not put yourself in a more fatigue zone after you're done with it.
Yep.
So you got that great run in that you were tired going into, but when you finished it, it didn't dig a deeper hole for you. So you got all of that great aerobic benefit from that session. It's yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add on the research end, this all matches really well because the work that we've done, we've shown that as you increase body weight support, the aerobic demand goes down for a given speed. But you can run faster with that body weight support, and then VO2 goes, aerobic demand goes up. And so you can really play around with that, reducing that impact and that load on the body, still get that aerobic training and actually do some higher speed training
work.
And you still get that neural component that you're getting plus the aerobic component, but now you're taking away that impact and that pounding.
Yeah, exactly. You guys have definitely done your research. Rick didn't warn me that you guys are so scientific.
Well, myself and a colleague over in Japan, Kenji Matsumoto, we've done a lot of work, but again, at the research level, Ted's done more at the applied level of using body weight support. So it's really this sort of neat match. But let me jump in a little different direction. Well, this terrible segue. Do you ever do any backward locomotion with body weight support?
I have not tried that.
Well, we've been looking at that from a physiological and a mechanical perspective. So I was just curious if you've started using that at all, or if you do use it.
No, but I'm definitely going to try. You know that I'm going to be on there tomorrow morning trying to run backwards, right? Yeah.
I love it.
In running, we do some backward drills outside.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. Just kind of like get the posterior chain firing before sessions and kind of as a warm up, because that's often so overlooked.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Never even dawned on me.
And people get nervous running on a treadmill backwards.
Yeah.
Right. So when we put them in support, it's kind of like it's going fast on a treadmill, right? Yeah. It's the same thing as when someone's backwards on a treadmill, there's something psychological that happens. You put them in support and they don't feel nervous.
Yeah. So what do you think what are the benefits of running backwards though?
Well, it will stretch the muscles a little bit different, and it ends up that the backward locomotion isn't just a forward backwards. It's a unique pattern, is what we're seeing. But as you increase the body weight support, those differences tend to get mitigated a bit. So the forward and the backward start to look a little closer at like each other a little bit. That's what we're seeing initially. We're also going to start doing some lateral locomotion in our boost system, because we can put people sideways in it now.
You know, the other area in my area is more like John was saying, is applied, in particular applied into chronic injury.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're actually seeing is backwards walking, especially, is targeting the vastus medialis oblique. So when people have, you know, weak VMOs and that's causing patellofemoral pain syndrome, that backwards running seems to stimulate that VMO more than almost anything.
Wow.
So
I think
yeah,
that's really cool, because I think on my curve, I think backwards running would be way more fun than
I do
on a
too.
regular treadmill.
I'm jealous you have one. I wish we had one of those. I actually love watching people run on those, because it looks good. It, like, you know, on a normal treadmill, it kind of looks always, even a good runner looks a little bit, something's a little bit off. Yeah. But on those curved treadmills, it just looks so natural, you know, and I think it's the way the running gait happens. And I don't know, I really should buy one.
Well, no, really, the other thing is that what I've noticed about it is I have clients that actually cannot and do not run outside. And I've seen them run outside, and they look absolutely not good. I shouldn't say. They just, it doesn't look pretty. And I put them on the curve, and they do 20-minute intervals, 10 minutes recovery, 10 minutes to stop or walk, and they look beautiful. And I've yet to see anybody on there that's just even a recreation athlete to an elite athlete not look good on the curve. And it's a phenomenal piece of equipment. I tried it. I was actually at my level 2 coaching for USATF in North Carolina. And I was at the gym, because I am a gym rat, love the gym. And I saw this treadmill. I had no clue how to use it. And I got on there and I was just blown away the minute I tried it. And I called my husband. I said, I think we have to get one of these, because it's the perfect fit for box jumps, weightlifting, and sprinting in the winter, because we can't do any sprinting outside. And I got home, and I mean, he was on me like, buy it. Yeah. And it was one of the best investments, because the other thing is too, the belt is so, it's not squishy soft, but the belt is so comfortable. Most of my athletes get on there barefooted. So not only that, we actually get to take our shoes off in the winter. So
a little anecdote for you. There's a triathlon has this thing called basically it's an indoor racing. So it's an indoor super league, it's called. And the first iteration of it, the athletes got on they were using the curved treadmills, because that's the only way you can really race another person, is on a curved treadmill, because there's no motor, right?
Yeah.
And the athletes they didn't want to take the time putting their shoes on, and they all got on without their shoes on. I'm like, how can they be running on this without their shoes? And it was a curved treadmill. Yeah. And so, but then they had to change the rules to make sure you had to put shoes on. But I just thought that was a really interesting that it was almost seamless, that they could run really well with their shoes off. It's interesting you say that.
Yeah, it's not like that barefoot running thing people were into before. I mean, this actually feels good.
Yeah, well, they're still striking normally. They weren't like forefoot striking. They're just they were striking normally. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I have several clients that actually cannot run outside, like it hurts their body. Yeah. So it'll be SI joints, knees, hips, whatever, something, back. Usually it's back. And you put them on a curve and they can run. And they don't have that same pain.
Okay, so when I buy my curve, my treadmill right over here is for sale for anyone that's interested. You got to pick it up. It's heavy. But I'll let you know when I have my curve. I don't think my my room can handle a bike and then 2 treadmills. So
Oh, you need both treadmills. You need
I
to
probably need both. That's
No.
true. Then I'm going to need 2 unweighting systems.
So
See,
along with this is really sort of a neat. So now I'm going to tease out your understanding from the applied perspective here. How long does it take someone to get used to running either on a curved treadmill or with body weight support? Like what's we would call that accommodation? How quickly do they learn how to run on those?
so learning to run on body weight support, I think,
Yeah.
is the easiest thing in the world. Just put it on and off you go, and you'll be in love with running. If you never were before, you will love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the curved treadmill with the body weight support, there really isn't any big learning curve there. The only thing that I would say is, you know, the curve really isn't built, I think, for more continuous running. You get very fatigued, even suspended. You'll get tired quicker because you're obviously moving the belt, and it kind of is in an incline sort of position. So you feel like you're always going slightly uphill. So that's why we have the other treadmill as well that goes 15 miles an hour, because you can do more continuous running and click into a pace. And because you're moving the belt, you feel like you're kind of going fast and slow, unless you're doing this kind of continuous sprint effort. So the learning curve for the Woodway, I say, would take it a little bit longer, but
Okay.
you know,
So
I tell people to hold on for a while, hold on to the handles and just get their legs moving for a little bit, and and they feel comfortable.
with the curved treadmill, are you seeing, or you think you're developing more posterior chain?
I think so.
Yeah.
When you get on there, you can feel it. You can feel that you've got to use those glutes and hamstrings, and you just have to work so much harder because you're moving that belt.
I think this would be such a good thing for a triathlete, because we get so much, quadricep dominant from being on the bike.
Yeah.
And so I think that this actually could be a good tool, with or without the bodyweight support. And I know that there are some of the gyms in town here that have those curved treadmills. So I think that, I think sometimes we look at that and we're like, oh, that looks a little weird, I'm not going to do it. But if you really think about the biomechanics of it, it could be quite advantageous.
Yeah, and it's great because a lot of people don't use them. So you can go to the gym, you don't even have to buy one. So the great thing about it is people aren't really that comfortable getting on there. And so it's nearly always free, because we've 2 at a gym here in town, which is very unusual for such a small town. And some of the schools have them as well. And actually at the schools, they never use them because they just don't feel comfortable using them. The kids don't know how to use them, and they start kind of flopping all over the place, unless you've got somebody there. And then you feel kind of silly getting on there too. Like, I think a lot of people be like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you probably do a YouTube and figure out how to use the curved treadmill. Maybe that's a good show to do, a YouTube on how to use the curve.
I think that's good. Once I get mine, we'll do it. We'll have you back on. You can instruct me on how to do it. Okay. So the next question I have for you, and it's not having to do with bodyweight support or curved treadmills or anything, but what do you see as the most common error in the athletes that you work with? And is this something that, and if they didn't do this, what do you think? Like, I hate to say it like that. I guess, most common error you see in either training or technique or anything.
Yeah, I would say one of the most common errors that I have seen over decades with athletes that I've coached, because then that'll get a larger range of people, from marathon runners to 400-meter runners, 800-meter runners, milers, whatever you have, is not doing the correct training for their event.
Specificity that you're talking about?
Yeah. Just not having the knowledge to do the right thing to develop and achieve the goals they want to achieve. And I think, let's say for the recreational athlete, if you have a goal to qualify for Boston or something, because I used to a lot of people come to me, they're like, I am so far off Boston, it's my dream, I want to qualify. And they'll be like 90 minutes off. And I was like, oh, can you show me your training? What are you doing? And I'll look at it and I'll just be like, oh my gosh, this is so wrong. Like, what have you been doing? And then, even like when I work with a 400-meter athlete, they're trying to get a track scholarship or something, and I look at their training and I'm like, oh, like, are you even training for the event? Like, it'll be from their weights program to training specific, the energy systems that they should be working. And they just leave so many out. Like, it'll be like, it's fine if you're an Ironman triathlete, you're in a predominantly zone 1, zone 2, and you need to stay in that zone. But for other events, you need to be in different zones. And just getting the training right for whatever goal it is you want to achieve. It's important to you. And, maybe just hiring somebody for a very short period of time to achieve that goal. And then you feel very satisfied, and then just go enjoy, just go run for the love of running or whatever it is. I think that's one of the biggest things that I see. And maybe the second would be even just not putting enough variety in to keep yourself healthy.
Yeah.
Is a big thing.
I'm so glad you said that. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of in runners is that they do something else aerobically.
Yeah.
So it can be swimming, it could be biking, it could be elliptical, it could be whatever the case may be. You're limited in running because of the stresses that are applied to it. But your cardiovascular system is not limited like that.
No.
Even we had a cross country coach at UNLV a few years ago that was having the athletes ride bicycles. And I was like, this is such a good thing. You should be doing this. Everyone should be doing this, right? You're going to get more out of, a couple hours on the bike than a couple extra hours running. The couple extra hours running is probably going to hurt you, where the bike is going to help you. And you're talking about with your daughter, she doesn't like to do other things than running, but I think you recognize how important that is to actually still train your aerobic system, or even anaerobically, like doing weight training or whatever the case may be. But I think to be a good runner, you really do need to think like that.
Yeah. And, one of the, we were fortunate enough that I had a light speed, so she didn't like to cross train. So essentially we were offloading her a lot so that she could get away with.
It was like going for a bike ride.
It was like going for a bike ride. So she was like quite a bit suspended, 6 months of the year. So it enabled her to stay healthier for longer. But if she thinks she's going to continue to run, yes, she needs to learn to do other things to keep that aerobic benefit up there, and not having the fear of trying other things. Because then when an injury does pop up, or you have a little accident and you actually can't run, it's not devastating. You've learned these other skills. You can pop into them immediately. They're enjoyable to you. And it's just, the repetitive stress of running, it just wears you out. So, when I was now looking back on my earlier years in my athletic career, I wish I had cross-trained more.
But it wasn't a thing. Like, even when I was younger and I was running, it wasn't a thing. It was just, you run, you're a runner.
Yeah.
We've come a long way in the last 15 or 20 years in our understanding of the physiology of aerobic sports.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other part of this, and both Ted and I are big advocates of variety in training, is running is a skill. And you can learn that skill by doing other forms of running, like running with body weight support, running on trails, or what have you. But I'm curious, the specificity is such a great principle. But we know treadmill running is a little different than running on the ground, and body weight support is a little bit different. Have you ever run into an athlete that really doubted using body weight support, but that they're going to benefit from it? Have you had to convince anyone in that direction?
I kind of, my athletes that I've had, that, my athlete that I coach in Connecticut, I try to encourage them. Like, I'm like, just use it as much as you can. Take advantage if it's a hot day in the summer, because now the weather's good and you're more tempted to run outside on every single run. And I'm always trying to encourage, hey, like, don't be scared to use it, just take advantage of it if it's really hot, and you still get the fitness benefits. And I feel more comfortable that you will stay healthier for longer. So you do have to convince people of it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that, because and you said it earlier, you can enjoy running when you take that edge of that pounding out of the equation of running.
Yeah. definitely. Definitely for those people out there that really don't enjoy running, it's kind of almost like a must. It's like if you're going to get a treadmill, get a suspension system with it so that you get that kind of little lift from it. And the one great thing, I mean, your friend here is the lever system. And the difference between lever and light speed, you can still use the treadmill as a normal treadmill and it stays put around the treadmill the whole time and you'd hardly notice it. And then you just put your bands and your clips on when you want to use it. And then you just take the bands and the clips off when it's not in use. Mm-hmm. But the lever you actually is attached to the treadmill. So you actually have to take it off if you're using it as a regular treadmill. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to use. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. It is really, really great. Really great to hear what you're doing with this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last question I'm going to ask you is, and this is just a kind of a more of an odd question, is where do you look for resources for your own continuing education and to become a better coach?
Well, I've pretty much taken everything I possibly can. I'm always going in a different direction. So, you know, I might go into a whole different area. I see you've got a reformer right behind you. So when I wanted to get a little bit deeper into core training and kind of really the breathing in core training, I actually became a Pilates instructor.
Yep.
And I felt like, you know, I'd gotten all this functional training certifications and everything and done a bunch with TRX. And I felt like I didn't truly know core training and breathing. Mm-hmm. There you go. So I'm also like, yeah, a TRX trainer, but I didn't really understand the breath and how important it is as you work. So I go right into a completely different, like I become a Pilates instructor, a fully certified Pilates instructor. Or one of the things I was working on was I had an athlete who kept getting shin pain. And, you know, people come to me a lot because they assume, okay, you're a world certified running coach. You're an Olympian. You've been at this for decades. How do I change my running form? And to be perfectly honest, with all of the education that I had, I actually felt like I could not help somebody with the running form. And so I'm always willing to admit my limitations. So I became a chi running instructor. So I learned everything about chi running. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things were really helpful. I can't say that I believe in every single thing in any discipline that I learn. There's always valuable tools from anything you study. So that helped me kind of get in the right direction to help people with running form and then also know what I'm looking at. And then also show the client, hey, here's where you need to change and here's some tips and tools on how to do that. I'm always reading and researching. I do spend a lot of time on YouTube, you know, so any place I can, you know, and I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and then a podcast will mention something about a book or an article or a method. And then you go down that rabbit hole of, oh, I need to find out more and more and more about that. And there's just so much to learn. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. Oh. And even from talking to you guys tonight, I'm like, I have to go back and listen to all your podcasts.
Oh, no, you don't have that much time.
I do. I have a lot of time.
So I think that we're kind of in a nutshell, what you're saying is, and this is something I teach my students, is ABL, always be learning.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to be successful in anything in life, right, and truly be great and have wisdom and you have to be continually learning, because you're right, you can never know everything, and the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Yeah. And so I think that your philosophy is probably what's making you successful.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not scared to be wrong, and I'm not scared to ask a question that may seem to make you seem like you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not scared to ask the questions. And you know, I've listened to podcasts where I've listened to coaches and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, but they didn't develop on that. And actually call the coach up and say, could you tell me more? And they're like, absolutely, I could tell you more. And just always willing to share. So That's really good. And just, I think being humble, like, as well. And I think for the coaches out there, you asked me about giving advice to athletes out there. And I think really it's the coaches out there need to look at themselves and say, what have I learned lately?
Mm-hmm.
As a high school coach, am I really helping these athletes? You've got a bunch of female athletes and they're weak hips and glutes, and maybe a lot of them are getting injured. And have you done the same thing for 40 years? Or have you learned from somebody? Have you asked somebody in your town that's knowledgeable a question lately? And for many of them, it's no. And I just feel very passionate about that, because you've got a lot of young lives in your hands, and many of them, sport is an outlet that leads to so many wonderful things, like maybe a track scholarship, or even being a walk-on on a team and creating an identity with a group when you actually enter college.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the opportunity to really mold a person's direction of their life in a very positive way. And I think high school coaches have a lot of power and a lot of influence to help people, which is really great. And it's just, seeing and believing in athletes, like, you can achieve this too, is another thing. Like, when an athlete comes to me and they're like, I think I'd like to run D1 as a walk-on. I'm like, okay, let's do that. Like, I just don't doubt them. I'm like, if you're willing to do the work, I think we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they get kind of shocked, like, oh my gosh, you believe in me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it's really a thrill to help people achieve their goals, and and be passionate about something.
Well, I love talking about the passion for learning, and in this area, and you brought up the female runner. Unfortunately, in the research world, we have a big gap in using females as research subjects, and so there still is a lot more learning that needs to happen, a lot more research that actually needs to happen to help the female runner.
Yeah, and I think for the female runner, they have to take their strength training and their specific injury prevention strength training, 3 times more serious than men have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you can build those really good foundations for them,
Mm-hmm.
it'll lead to a much longer, healthier career. Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think we should leave it there, because that was so inspirational at the end.
Yeah.
This was such a good conversation. We can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. I think that the people that listen to us on a regular basis are going to get a lot out of this. So
Good.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you to Rick for putting us in touch with you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I hope you enjoy listening to some of our other podcasts, and feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Breeda. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.